Welcome into Outkick the show. I am your fearless host, Clay Travis. I have got a young guest with me right here who just came running up the stairs and refuses to do anything because he says, what did you tell me?
I'm bored.
Yeah, he's bored. This is Nash. Nash is 3, and we got a lot to talk about in today's show, but Nash was bored, so he gets to stay and wave at everybody. Hi, everybody. Can you say hi? I am Clay Travis. This is Outkick the show. I want to tell you, if you're gambling on the World Cup, if you're checking out lines anywhere, you need to go to thehomeloanexpert.com. You'll be glad that you did. Also, wherever you are in the country, you need to go out and make sure you get the best possible mortgage rate. Get pre-qualified in as little as a day with my friends at thehomeloanexpert.com. And also, and this is important, this is also important, if you have credit card debt, you can go out and you can make sure that all that credit card debt gets wiped out. Who spends more money in our house, mommy or daddy? Nash, did you like Incredibles 2? Was it a good movie? Would you tell people to go see Incredibles 2?
No.
You wouldn't tell them to go see Incredibles 2. Why not?
Because
you liked the movie. We went to go see Incredibles 2. Dad movie review. It was great. I think people will enjoy it. All right, show people what jersey you're wearing. Show people what jersey you're wearing. Who's that?
Mariota.
Mariota. Who does Mariota play for?
For the Titans.
Yeah, for the Titans. All right. You go downstairs, go play with your brother. They're playing Fortnite, okay? Say bye to everybody.
Bye.
Bye. All right. That is Nash. Nash, good job. Don't trip over that cord. Be careful. Okay. Go down and play with your brothers. Nash was bored, so he wanted to come up and see what Dad was doing. Dad's making a show, and now he is back downstairs. All right, we got a bunch to get to. Everybody loves Fortnite in this household. Fortnite is getting a lot of wins in terms of its play during the summer in the Travis household. Both of the oldest boys are on it all the time. All right, we got a bunch of stuff to get to. This Jameis Winston mess, I think there is a big day of reckoning coming for the NFL and for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as well as the NFL's personal conduct policy. Maxine Waters has gone off the deep end, as has this restaurant in Lexington, Virginia, which refused to serve Sarah Sanders, the White House spokesperson. I'm going to talk about that. Jimmy Fallon got busted with a burner account. NBA comes to late night. If you haven't seen this, it's ridiculous. Jimmy Fallon got caught liking one of his own tweets and complimenting himself from a burner account, which is unbelievable. And NBA free agency inches closer and closer. We're at 6 days till the official start of NBA free agency. But I want to start with this Jameis Winston mess. Let's talk Jameis Winston. If you were accused of rape in college, would you ever put yourself into another position where you could be accused of sexual assault if you had any kind of working brain at all? Here's the story if you don't know it. Jameis Winston's out in Scottsdale, Arizona. He's out with 2 guys. One of them, Darby, is a guy who plays with the Philadelphia Eagles and previously said that he saw Jameis Winston having consensual sex with the girl at FSU. So he's basically Winston's fall guy. He's going to say no matter what happens, Jameis Winston didn't do anything wrong. On top of that, the other guy that Jameis Winston is out with, guy by the name of Brandon Banks, you may recall he's currently serving 15 years in prison for rape at Vanderbilt University of an undergrad. Okay, I'm not an expert here, thankfully. But if you were accused of rape, and let's say he did nothing wrong, and he managed to just get totally wrongfully treated in this story, would you ever put yourself in this position again if you had the resources that Jameis Winston does? Here's some of the things that Jameis Winston could do. He could hire full-time security. He could have a guard every time he goes out, accompany him everywhere he goes. The Bucs might well pay for it, and it would cost $100,000 or less. He could have a full-time driver to ensure that if he were out drinking, he doesn't have to get into a random Uber with a random woman in it. He could never sleep with another woman or insist that every time he does, they sign consent forms and also do videos to acknowledge that they are consenting. Instead, he gets in an Uber and allegedly gropes a woman at a fast food restaurant. This, to me, is just a different kind of dumb. Now, I said, if you watch this show, if you listen to me at all, if you read Outkick, I said when he came out, he's got a lot of talent, there's no doubt about it. The decisions that he's made off the field, I would never draft him number 1 overall. Whether or not you believe that he was guilty of rape, big red flag, I think everybody would say. The fact that he was even investigated for it. If you were being investigated for rape, would you stand up on a table during your lunch at the college campus and scream that you're going to fuck her right in the pussy? I don't know about you, but if I was under investigation for rape, I probably wouldn't stand up and scream that like they did in that situation. On top of that, as if that were not ridiculous enough, I also would not steal crab legs, and I probably wouldn't do thousands of dollars in damage while playing with a BB gun. And if I ever got accused of sexual assault, I would never, ever, for the rest of my life, ever put myself into a situation where I could get accused of sexual assault again. To me, this is a mess. We don't even need to get into the E to W speech or start a brawl on the sideline after you are not even playing in the game like he did with Lattimore and the Saints down on the field. To me, everything about this is utterly absurd in every respect. Okay? By the way, some people going after my ringtone here. Let me tell you, if you just heard my ringtone go off, I'm not a tech guy. All right? Not a tech guy. I don't know how anything works. That is the standard ringtone if you don't change anything. That's the ringtone that comes on if you have never actually changed the ringtone on your phone. All you tech wizard show-offs out there worried about my ringtone need to know a couple of things. One, my ringtone is almost always on vibrate. Almost never have the sound turned on because when you do a live show or anything else, I don't want to get interrupted. All right? 2, I'm not a custom ringtone guy. All you people out there with your things that you spend money on that don't matter, I'm a very basic guy. I don't know how anything works technologically. The fact that I've got the most successful Periscope show in the history of Periscope is really amazing. All right? But let me get back to Jameis Winston here. I got to tell you, ringtone guy can go fuck himself. All right? I go with a default ringtone. I don't even know how to set the ringtone on my phone. I've had the same answering machine, like voice on my phone for 15 years since I got the first cell phone. All right? And by the way, if you ever call and leave me a voicemail message, I hate you. Because anybody who leaves me a voicemail message, I never can download it. I'm always sitting around like, is this important? Man, somebody left me a voicemail. If you can call me, you can text me. And you can tell me in 10 words what I need to know so that I can maintain the progress of my day instead of having to get a voicemail from you. Voicemail guy, worst ever. All right? I got to tell you, worst ever. All right, so let's go back to Jameis Winston here for a minute. To me, this is absurd. It is absurd on every level that Jameis Winston is involved in this situation, and I think it's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be really ugly for Jameis Winston when all of this suspension officially comes down. There's all these people reporting that he's going to get 3 games. I'll tell you what immediately is going to happen. If he gets suspended for 3 games, people are going to immediately say, wait a minute. If you sexually assault a woman in the NFL, it only costs you 3 games. That's what immediately everybody's going to say. It's also going to bring back up all of the ugliness surrounding Jameis Winston's tenure at Florida State. And I am willing to give a benefit of the doubt sometimes to people. If you read all of those details, and if you read the way the Tallahassee Police Department investigated that case, and if you read the way Florida State protected Jameis Winston, I think that there's a very real possibility that if the Tallahassee Police Department had adequately investigated this case, that Jameis Winston would have been charged with rape, he would have never won the Heisman Trophy, he would have never played for Florida State, and his football career might well be over. So I think this idea that Jameis Winston was treated unfairly, remember, when you actually got to a Title IX investigation, do you remember what the result was? This is an improbable result. Turtle doesn't get on the top of a fence by accident. 50% chance Jameis Winston raped this girl, 50% chance he did not. That's what the official Florida State investigation found. So a lot of people out there are like, oh, he's innocent, he did nothing wrong. No. He may very well have done something wrong, but they were not able to prove what actually happened because they didn't do an adequate investigation. 50% chance he raped her, 50% chance he didn't, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers still took him number 1 overall. I said I wouldn't touch him. Here's what's going to happen. He gets a 3-game suspension. The Buccaneers are going to have to answer, in this modern Me Too era, a really difficult question. How many men get accused of rape once? Not that many in the grand scheme of things. How many men get accused of sexual assault twice? Not that many in the grand scheme of things. The fact that both of these might well have happened is, to me, an utter indictment of the way that the Bucs went about picking Jameis Winston. And again, if I were being sane at all, if I were Jameis Winston trying to do a decent job of proving that everybody was wrong, this is not the way to make it happen. Do I believe that Jameis, and by the way, here's the other story. The same guy who said, oh, I watched Jameis Winston have sex with that girl, it was consensual, is now saying, oh, Jameis Winston wasn't even in that Uber that night. Awfully convenient that Jameis Winston has got a guy who, no matter what happens, says he didn't do anything wrong. If Jameis Winston has been wrongfully accused twice, that seems unlikely, but this is a mess. I asked the question. Here's the decision the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have to make. He's going to make $20 million a year from now. He's got a 4-year contract as a rookie. The team has a 5th-year player option, or 5th-year option. Are you going to invest $20 million in Jameis Winston? He's been just okay through 3 years. He's been a disaster now off the field, who may miss your first 3 games. I don't agree with the NFL personal conduct policy. I think the NFL made a bad decision when they started to penalize players for off-the-field related events. My argument has been consistent for a decade. Ever since this thing started, it has been, do not get in the business of punishing players for entirely off-the-field related incidents, because it's going to be a mess. The criminal justice system is difficult. I told you before, I didn't think Ezekiel Elliott was guilty. He got suspended for 6 games. I think the idea that when Adrian Peterson gets accused of beating his child, the first thing people think is, what's the NFL going to do about this? Not what's the criminal justice system going to do, what's the NFL going to do about this? I feel the same way when I see a story come out and it is, oh, look, Ray Rice punched his fiance, and the first thing people think is not, what is the state of New Jersey going to do, but what is the NFL going to do? Roger Goodell fundamentally failed when he decided that the NFL was going to get in the business of actually punishing people. Okay? So as a result, now they have painted themselves into a corner, and I think Jameis Winston is in an utter world of hurt, especially if this punishment comes out this week or during the summer when there's not a lot of other news. In this modern Me Too era, a lot of people are going to go back to the accusations that were made at Florida State, and they're going to say, why in the world did the Tampa Bay Buccaneers not just draft him, but draft him number 1 overall despite all these red flags? I wouldn't have touched him. I wouldn't have drafted him. I said that at the time of the draft 3 years ago. I've maintained it ever since. I think that Jameis Winston is a mess off the field, and I wouldn't want him to be the face of my franchise. And this story coming out of Scottsdale, Arizona, is everything about it. I want to answer questions because a lot of you have had questions about this Jameis Winston case. What questions do you guys have about the Jameis Winston case? Anybody on Facebook, anybody on Periscope right now, any questions that you guys have right now? I agree with you. I think Goodell has been bad on both the discipline issue and the anthem. I think Roger Goodell has not done a good job. Do Uber cars have cameras in them? Have you never been in an Uber? No, they don't all have cameras in them. And this girl has not made a criminal accusation against him. Some people are saying, well, what's the motivation for this girl? Jameis Winston, she reported immediately groped her, and he got banned by Uber. So you want to know what it takes to get banned by Uber? It takes somebody groping like Jameis Winston did. The girl didn't go to the authorities. Why did she not go to authorities? I can't explain why she didn't go to authorities. The only thing I can think is, and I talked about this on the show this morning, the only thing I can think is she didn't necessarily think the police needed to get involved. If you have been out to a club or out to a bar, you have probably seen some guy grab a girl inappropriately in a crowded bar, right? Or a crowded nightclub. And I think most women's reaction there is they slap a guy or they shove him away. Maybe they get him kicked out of the bar, but usually they don't call the police. And so I think what she probably felt is this guy behaved inappropriately. He shouldn't be able to take Uber anymore. I'm going to report him, but I'm not going to go to police. I don't want to spend all day at a police station working my way through it. So that's my guess. I don't know, but psychologically, I think that's probably the most likely explanation for what happened, for why she did not go public. It's actually to Winston's benefit, because if news had gotten out about a criminal investigation, he would have been in even more trouble. So I think this is a mess. I think this is a real mess for the NFL. I think it's going to be a mess for Jameis Winston, and I don't know what the overall outcome is going to be, but I think Jameis Winston is in trouble. How would I have dealt with? I think Jameis Winston coming out in the middle of Me Too would have been an even bigger story than it is now. Because, again, if you listen to his accuser, she made a pretty good case. And remember, they didn't investigate it. They didn't find the camera at the bar. They didn't find the cab driver who drove them home. They didn't find the video. Remember, one of Jameis Winston's teammates took a video of him having sex with her and then deleted it and threw away the phone. I've always said, anytime a phone disappears, you have to question what that phone showed. If they had kept that video of him having sex with her, then I think everybody would have been able to look at it and be like, oh, she was consenting, or she was telling him no, and she was on video saying no, 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 and Winston's teammate videoed it and then threw it away. If they actually do their job at the Tallahassee Police Department, they probably get that phone and they get that video, and they can determine whether or not he is whether or not he is guilty. I mean, that would have been the ultimate evidence here of whether she was consenting or not. And again, if that video existed, why did he delete it? Why did he delete that video if it was 100% showing that Jameis Winston did nothing wrong? And again, it's weird in and of itself that your teammates are walking in videoing you while you're having sex with a girl. But that's the story there. I think this is going to be a mess when it comes down. They protected him because he's a star football player. I don't think there's any doubt. The Tallahassee Police Department protected him, refused to do an adequate investigation, refused to uncover evidence to prove it. And so as a result, I think this Jameis Winston case is going to get uglier from here. Okay, let's talk about this situation. Let me say this again. People are asking questions. I don't think the NFL should be in the personal conduct policy business. I don't think you should get suspended I think the criminal justice system should handle all of this, and the NFL should take action after the criminal justice system. If you want to suspend a guy for a season because he gets convicted of a crime, I don't agree with that. I think the criminal justice system exists for that reason. I said back when Michael Vick was in prison, when he comes out of prison, if there's a team that wants to sign him, he should be able to play football. I don't think that our sports should exist as moral authorities or arbiters to sit around and say, oh, this guy's good enough to play football, this guy's not good enough, all of those things. But I have to tell you, if you are Jameis Winston, you have to be smarter than this. You cannot put yourself in this position. If you've got millions of dollars on the line, tens of millions of dollars on the line, you can't be this dumb. And it looks like there's a pattern of off-field behavior from Jameis Winston that's incredibly dumb. All right, here's the truth. As we move on to this other story. We cannot be in the business of having people decide that they're not going to serve people whose politics they don't like. I am utterly bothered by this story that came out of Lexington, Virginia. If you're not familiar with this story, the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, went out to dinner in Lexington, Virginia. Beautiful town. Love that town. VMI is there. Washington and Lee is there. I've been a lot of time there over the years. I thought about going to college at one of those places. It's a great town to visit. Stonewall Jackson's home there. I've toured Stonewall Jackson's home. You cannot actually get into this era of if we don't like somebody's politics, we kick them out of a restaurant. This is utterly wrong in my opinion, okay? At its most basic level. You, if you have a restaurant, have an obligation to serve people there. Now, if people become intoxicated, if they become disruptive, if they show up and they're like, hey, I know you're a pizza place, but I want chicken tenders, you don't have an obligation to go outside of your realm of business to serve somebody. But when you make decisions like this, you are fueling Donald Trump. And the fact that Democrats don't understand this is driving me bonkers. The way to combat Donald Trump is to fight him on the issues and try to beat him there. It is not to engage in a battle over societal and cultural norms and follow him off the cliff while you're wrestling with each other. Okay? I don't see it as being a good decision. All right? To me, if you own a business, you have an obligation, which I do, you have an obligation to serve everybody. For instance, I would not turn down anybody when my new book comes out, Republicans Buy Sneakers Too. If somebody wants me to autograph it, I will autograph it for everybody. If somebody walks up to me and says, fuck you, I hate you, probably not going to sign the book, okay? But the book can still be bought by anybody. And the bar that I have an ownership stake in, we don't turn down anybody for beer or food because everybody is treated equally. I think this is an awful decision. This is an awful decision that is setting forth a really bad precedent in this country. You serve everybody. The entire premise of my book, Republicans Buy Sneakers Too, is that deciding to get involved in politics is awful decisions for businesses. You should try to be serving everybody. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Muslim, Jewish, Christian. I want everybody to be able to consume my content. The wedding cake issue is actually, let me take a step back on this wedding cake, because a bunch of people are asking about the wedding cake. The wedding cake is actually a fascinating legal dispute because you have two conflicting rights that are going head to head. On the one hand, and the way that I would describe it is this. Let me take a step back and talk about from a lawyer's perspective. You do not have to represent every single person who comes in and asks me to be their lawyer. If I feel like I've got a conflict, if I feel like I can't do a good job representing them, I am not obligated to represent every single potential client who walks into my law office. Okay, if I'm still practicing law. I can say, you know what, I'm not an expert in criminal law. Or I'm not an expert in doing wills. There's somebody else who can do a better job for you. To me, the wedding cake situation is fascinating because this guy considers himself to be effectively an artist. Okay? And just like Elton John doesn't have to show up at every single wedding and perform at that wedding if he doesn't like the people who are getting married there or doesn't agree with them or just doesn't particularly find them to be people that he wants to accept money from. I think that the wedding cake case is fascinating because if you are truly an artist, I don't have to sell every one of my pieces of artwork to you, or even crazier, I don't have to agree to do a commission of a cake for you. If you want to come in and buy something that is generally available to everyone, this is why I think it's an important distinction. I want you to follow me here. Facts matter, okay? If I walk into a restaurant and I say, hey, I want to eat this on the menu, and you say, no, I refuse to serve you, that to me is different than if I walk into a restaurant and I say, hey, I see that you're a really popular restaurant. I was hoping you could make something unique for me that's not available to the general public right now. Think about that. If Sarah Sanders had walked into this restaurant in Lexington, Virginia, and if she had said, hey, I see your menu here, is it possible that you could make something for me special that's not on this menu? They could have said, no, I'm not going to do that. The menu is the menu, right? Or if they really liked her, they could be like, yeah, we'll make you whatever you want. When you walk into a cake, again, this is not complicated, but you need to follow it. They were asking him to make a specific cake for them uniquely. He told them they could buy any available cake that was already there. That to me is akin to trying to order off the menu, in which case there to me is a substantial difference. Because if you walk into my establishment and you say, hey, I see your menu, but I want something that's not available here already, I want you to make me something special, I'm not obligated to do that if it conflicts with whatever reason, rationale I want. I'm telling you right now, I think that you aren't obligated. If you are a unique person with a unique set of skills, you're not obligated to serve every person on the planet. I buy into that, okay? Now, I think the question becomes, what is a unique talent? In other words, if somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, Clay Travis, I want you to write specific wedding vows for my wedding. I probably wouldn't do that unless I was really good friends with somebody. But if I had generic wedding vows that I could sell them, that would make sense. So to me, that is really kind of a fascinating angle. Some people are saying, oh, it's politics versus religion. Politics is a religion for many people, and that's part of the problem that exists in our country today. So I don't see those as being analogous situations. And you have to, when you really break down, the facts matter in a big way in this situation. The other thing I would say is I don't think it's an easy case, which is why the Supreme Court has not decided the cake case yet. But if you are specifically requesting something unique that doesn't exist in the store, that's different because you are giving your labor away to it versus if you are asking for everything, right? It's something that's already on the menu. And so I don't think it's an easy angle to break down. The reason why the Supreme Court really hasn't decided this case is because it's really challenging. Who has the right here? Does the person have the right of service, or does the person have the right to establish their religious beliefs? Another way of thinking about this, and I'm not an expert on dietary restrictions, but let's take it outside of the world of Christianity. If you walked into a Jewish restaurant, which was focused on serving only kosher meals, and you asked them to prepare you a non-kosher meal, would that Jewish deli or place of business have an obligation to make a non-kosher meal? If you walked into a Muslim restaurant, okay, if you walked into a Muslim restaurant and you asked for something that was outside the bounds of the Muslim faith, they wouldn't have an obligation to make that for you either. My easy answer here is don't try and pick fights. All right? If you are gay and you want to get a wedding cake, I'm sure there are any number of places that will give you a spectacular wedding cake. Okay? Why pick the one place that doesn't want to give you a wedding cake specially designed for your wedding and have a multi-year fight over it? I mean, it's a fascinating legal hypothetical question, but I don't know that it's, like, there's a great aphorism, tough cases make bad law. This is a tough case. I don't think it's a tough case of, hey, if you walk into a public restaurant, I don't think public restaurants should be refusing service to people based on whether they work for the president or not, or based on whether they're Republicans or Democrats or not. I think that's insane. I think it's crazy. I think it is a bad precedent to be setting. And I think that you need to be above that if you are a individual who runs a bar or restaurant. And I've got an ownership stake in a bar or restaurant. To me, the only time you should not serve somebody in a bar or restaurant, they have too much alcohol, they're becoming abusive, if they're using language that you're not comfortable with, if they are behaving in a method that you think is detracting from the overall dining environment, then I think that's fine. But this is a major issue. Put it this way, and I try to be very middle of the road when I analyze these things. What would the response be if somebody was not served because of their race? Democrats and the left-wingers would lose their mind, right? They would absolutely lose their mind if somebody said, hey, I can't serve a black person, a Hispanic person, or an Asian person here because, and by the way, it can be any race. If you walked into an Asian restaurant and they're like, sorry, we only serve Asian people here. If you walked into a Hispanic restaurant and they were like, sorry, we only serve Hispanic people here. Black restaurant, we only serve black, whatever it is. There would be an uproar, right? 100% there would be an uproar. why should we allow discrimination based on politics? That would be my question. The other thing would be, if you really wanted the cake desperately, why can't one person go order the cake? How does he know it's a gay wedding? I don't remember all the details there, but if you are so desperate to get this guy to make you a cake because he's the best cake maker in wherever it is, why can't you just go in and get one guy to go buy it? I don't like when I feel as if we are trying to intentionally create division. This was like my issue with the transgender bathroom debate. Who out there is doing genital checks to make sure that people go in the right bathroom? Throughout the 1970s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, I don't ever remember there being a huge battle over what bathroom people were going to use. And I don't think it's appropriate for a restaurant to decide only Republicans can eat here, only Democrats can eat here, only independents can eat here. I think it's a really bad precedent to set. And so I find it to be wholly awful in all respects, the way this story went down. And I'm also going to say, as I read this tweet, I think that this all plays into Donald Trump's hands. Because the idea that he is selling is Democrats don't like you. They find you to be deplorable. They think you're awful human beings. They think you're sexist. They think you're racist. And guess what's happening? Democrats are playing 100% into it. It's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. And how, by the way, are you going to follow this? Are you going to allow individual bartenders to decide if they'll give somebody a drink? Are you going to allow individual servers to decide whether or not they will bring somebody food? I just think it is really bad for our country for stories like this to be happening because they set precedents that are unacceptable to me. Okay? There is a story out here. By the way, Jimmy Fallon gets caught with a burner. By the way, I'm going to have to break somebody. You have a face for radio. First of all, if I happen to look over and you see that you're behaving like a loser, do you think that at the age of 39, you're suddenly going to insult me by saying what I look like? Let me just be honest with you. I've got 3 sons. I started off the show with one of those sons. I've got a former NFL cheerleader wife who's smoking hot. I am rolling in all respects. Do you think that at almost 40 years old, I wake up in the morning and think to myself, oh my God, how do I look today? Do you think in any respect that I give one iota of consideration to larger, I do this show in t-shirts and every day. I'm a t-shirts and flip-flops guy. I got a good life going. Of all the things first of all, your insults are not going to work on me. Secondly, of all the things you could say, you're going to insult my physical appearance and expect that it's going to be a major issue for me. It's just a loser for you. I'm just going to tell you, it's almost impossible to insult me, first of all, because I just don't care. If you like me, fine. If you don't like me, fine. My life doesn't change at all based on your opinions. But when I see Maxine Waters say, if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd and you push back on them and you tell them they're not welcome anymore anywhere. You know who also made that argument? White people who were fighting the civil rights movement. We have ended up in a big circle where now there is zero tolerance for people that have a different opinion than you. And what is particularly troubling about this to me is that we've decided there are acceptable and unacceptable opinions. And if you are a First Amendment absolutist like me, you don't believe that there should be somebody who's out there in charge. I saw the other day, I was reading where the ACLU now says we won't defend all speech if we decide that it's too hateful. I'm like, are you kidding me? The ACLU, which used to defend all speech, has now got new maxims that they're following, where if they decide that the speech is too hateful, they won't defend it. I think the enemy to speech you don't like is more speech. I don't think that the way to get speech that you don't like beaten in the world in the marketplace of ideas is by trying to silence people. If I were Maxine Waters, can you imagine if violence befalls a member of the Trump administration because people have seen these words and they follow through and act on them in a violent fashion? I just think it's a bad precedent. I think it's bad to follow. People say, well, how come you criticize Democrats here? Democrats are the people who say now, you can't say that. Republicans might disagree with you, but they don't say, you can't say that, and you don't have a right to have a job. We're in a really scary time in this country right now, where we have progressed from, I disagree with you, and let me tell you why, to, I disagree with you, and you don't have a right to your opinion, and you don't have a right to have a job. That's scary. That's totalitarianism. The ironic thing about Democrats calling President Trump a Nazi is that they are actually more totalitarian right now than he is when it comes to speech. And I'm not saying Trump is perfect, far from it. But when you say, not anymore, I don't like, if I say something and you disagree with me, you are certainly welcome to disagree with me. But saying, I disagree with you and here's why you're wrong is fundamentally different than I disagree with you and you don't have the right to have that opinion anymore and you don't have the right to have a job, which is what I see happening all the time now. I guarantee you some people are going to say that about me when my new book comes out. They're going to be like, oh my God, Clay Travis has got opinions that make me upset and you don't have a right to have them anymore. And so much of this is being driven, I think, by legitimately fake news and fake opinions that exist on Twitter. And we saw yet again, Jimmy Fallon got busted with a burner account. I will pledge to you on everything that I hold dear. I have never and will never tweet anything other than what comes from me or from occasionally the Outkick account. And maybe I'm too cocky for that. But I am not out there tweeting other things from burner accounts. So much, I think, of what's happening on social media now is artificial. And as a result, that disconnect between real and artificial is motivating much of the angst that exists in our country today. And I guarantee you there's a lot of people out there who are praising that woman who made the decision not to serve Sarah Sanders and her family or her staff or whoever was there in Lexington, Virginia. And I just find it to be fundamentally wrong. I find it awful that anybody would ever make that decision. I am Clay Travis, NBA free agency. Let me close out with NBA free agency. I got to tell you, I think LeBron's going to go to the Lakers, but I don't think he's going to be able to bring very much talent with him. Chris Paul stays in Houston. I think there's a good chance Paul George is going to end up staying in Oklahoma City. We'll see what happens. But all of that still to come. I've got boys downstairs who are fighting to play Fortnite, so I'm going to let you go. I'll be live tomorrow, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern on Fox Sports Radio. If you like this show, share it. Good luck to Arkansas. Good luck to Oregon State in tonight's College World Series. And I love all of you. Appreciate all that you do. Share the show. Go check out the betting odds, sportsbookreview.com. I am Clay Travis, DBAP, but sometimes SBAP. Kisses for everybody. Go into Fortnite. Go take the boys out for a night. Love you guys. Share the show if you enjoy it. I'll talk to you tomorrow.